Monday, 31st of May, 2021. Psalm 44, verse 21 to 26, and we'll finish this psalm off today. Shall not God search this out, for he knoweth the secrets of the heart? Yea, for thy sake are we killed all the day long. We are counted as sheep for the slaughter. Awake, why sleepest thou, O Lord? Arise and cast us not off forever. Wherefore hidest thou thy face, and forgettest our affliction and our oppression? For our soul is bowed down to the dust, our belly cleaveth unto the earth. Arise for our help and redeem us for thy mercy's sake. Let's read back a little bit from probably verse 19. Though thou hast sore broken us in the place of dragons and covered us with the shadow of death, if we have forgotten the name of our God or stretched our hands to a strange God, shall not God search this out? Okay, so the Lord is going to know what is in the heart. What this reminds me of, and what I come to oftentimes when I read scriptures like this, it's chapter 20 of Proverbs, I believe. The spirit of man is the candle of the Lord. You are going to be familiar with that verse, surely? Yes, no, maybe? 20, I believe. Spirit of man is the candle of the Lord. Might be chapter 21. It's there somewhere. But anyway, without spending too much time, I can't find it. Anyway, it is there, 20 or 21. That's what this reminds you of. Shall not God search this out? Interesting. Just think about that for a second. The spirit of man, God gives you life. By the spirit that he gave you, that is his. He owns this. It is what gives you life. Adam was made of the dust of the ground. The Lord breathed into him. He became a living soul. He breathed in him the breath of life. Genesis 2:7. So just the physical body and the soul doesn't have life. You need the spirit to bring it life. And that spirit returns unto God who gave it. Ecclesiastes chapter 3. So what you've got here is the Lord knows the thoughts and intents of every man by the fact he has life. The candle he requires to give light to his existence, to give life to his soul, is what God has to see what is in the body, what is in the heart. Okay, so the Lord will find this out. Yea, for thy sake, God's sake, are we killed all the day long. David has a strong testimony here. If you do not have a strong testimony, you have the favour of man all the time, without consideration of God. It's a very lonely place to be without the Lord and to have some high measure of morality. Because you'd have the basis of, and the Lord does this, I've seen, or I know of, certain circumstances where people have a high sense or a very strong sense of justice, moral justice, and they're angry at certain things and why certain things take place. And there's no recourse for their distress at injustice that they see in this earth. So what do, do you think? They implode and become drunks. Every little bit of rebellion they see in their life, they lash out at. Husbands beating their wives and their wives give them a bit of lip. See, there's no foundation for why they feel this conscience. And then they themselves become the greatest of all offenders. Because they've got no strength in what they believe. It's just a strong sense of justice and a very highly refined, not that every man who beats his wife has this, is not what I'm getting at, or lashes out at society. However, it foments and leads to great self-righteousness. You know, a man can take a gun and start shooting people dead because they're not living according to what he believes is right. Yet what is right? Pilate says to Jesus, what is truth? He's very jaded when he says that, very broken in society. He sees one God here, one God there. One country lives one way and is prosperous, and one country lives another way and is prosperous, and it's very confusing. What is truth? What God is right is just basically what Pilate was saying. There was a sense of justice there, a sense of injustice. He didn't want to kill Christ. He didn't want to send him to the cross. He just wanted to try to live his life and eke out some sort of existence and pleasurable time, because who wants to live like a slave in a galley, in a ship as a slave, you know, getting lashes upon his back for 3 years or so until he wears out and they throw him overboard. Who wants to live like that? Like a mere beast of burden. So what is truth? You see, this is the question you've got to ask yourself is, why do I live? What is truth? Do I just, you know, endure the rantings of the bearded man called your father until there is a time that I can escape? Is that how you view what we do here? Shall not God search us out, for he knoweth the secrets of the heart? Yea, for thy sake, God's sake, are we killed all the day long. The sacrifice you make is your flesh. God is not unjust that he forgets the sacrifice you've done. Occasionally, very occasionally, I'm not necessarily feeling morose or sorry for myself in prayer, but it becomes very evident that I'm very alone. I have my beautiful family here, but there are times I feel very alone, where I sit and the Lord brings this strong sense of justice to me, and the foundation is Christ. So I bring it back to the Word, the rock upon which I have laid the house, or the house of Christ is laid and I'm a part of. I look at my family and I become distressed with all of you. And if you had any sense, you'd have the same feeling. I'm very aware of my own failures and failings and poor example I give at times, but there's enough there that you can see Christ. And if you look in context, that I have come from a fallen father who came from, follow the line back, a fallen father Adam, then my hope must be in the last Adam. You getting this?
Yep.
Verse 23, he's counted as sheep to the slaughter, but something is coming to his soul. What is it? Awake, why sleepest thou, O Lord? Arise, cast not off forever. This feeling of a strong sense of justice comes back to where the foundation is. It's the Lord. He knows where to go for aid. He knows where to go to help. These mass shootings and other shootings in the 1980s, the news media were very strong in a particular thing. Every time there was some sort of tragedy, a man takes his family hostage. The police come, stir up the anger of the man, make him feel like there's absolutely no place to go. There's no hope for him. So what does he do? Well, he's got a gun. You know, he shoots himself and he kills his family, shoots himself. Because that's the strong sense of justice that has no morality, or a strong sense of morality that has no foundation for that morality. You're raised in a Christianized nation, but you have no Christ. You see the right way. The Lord's been trying to gather this man, but he has no foundation. So, awake, why sleepest thou? We have recourse to the Lord. O Lord, arise, cast us not off forever. Wherefore hidest thy face? What comes from the face of God?
Light.
Light. It's not just the thing on the roof, is it? You know, turn a switch and there's light. We have cheapened what light is. Light is life. Light is life. That's what light is. And the Lord wants us to see what is in us, and he puts us in circumstances that shows us how corrupt we are. It is a lie of Satan for a minister of anything to come along and say, you can live your best life now. Your best life now is death. If your best life was now, wouldn't you be in the resurrection already? Wouldn't Christ be ruling and reigning from Jerusalem? That's the best life. And you would have a resurrected body. You would have no aches, no pains, no failure, no sin. No sin. No sinful thought, no trying to judge righteousness or assess how I can interact with others, or should I interact with certain people, should my children interact with certain people, when you yourself are flawed. And ultimately, your decision making is going to have some measure of leaven in it. But yet you have a strong sense of righteousness. So let's look at David here. What is he? Awake, why sleepest thou? O Lord, arise, cast us not off forever. You know, this sounds like, it's interesting. Whenever David talks about a circumstance, when you're in a circumstance, you're not in the circumstance. Okay, then you're in the circumstance, then you're out of the circumstance. Now, I'm going to read you the last two verses, and I want you to think of that for a moment. You're in it, you're not in it, you become in it, and then you become delivered from it. What does this sound like? Wherefore hidest thou thy face, 24, forgettest our affliction and our oppression, for our soul is bowed down to the dust, our belly cleaveth unto the earth. Arise for our help, and redeem us for thy mercy's sake. Now, what does that sound like? What is it a reference to?
Rapture.
Close. The rapture has a better word, a more biblical word.
More biblical.
Resurrection. Very good, because you are not in the problem, your birth. You're in the problem, death. Your belly cleaves to the dust, your soul cleaves to the dust. Why does it go back to the dust? Sin. From the dust thou came, the dust thou shalt return. Every problem you go through shows Christ's birth, his death, and his resurrection. Every problem. And how do you come out of that problem you're in? How do you come out of it? Let's see, what does David say here? What verse are we looking to here? Look at verse 23. Read it for me, son.
Awake, why sleepest thou, O Lord? Arise, cast us not off forever.
The Lord has cast off the first Adam, and where does he go?
Second Adam.
He has cast off the first Adam. Where does he go? He goes to the dust. That's you. That's this body. It's cast off. But David says, Lord, cast us not off forever. Oh, the resurrection comes. The resurrection cometh. Look at this. Verse 26. Arise for our... What is arise? He's coming from the dead. He is living. He is alive. He is alive. Arise for our help. Redeem us. Redeem us from what?
Our sin.
Redeem us from death, darling. No. Yes, you are correct. But take sin to its ultimate conclusion. What is sin's ultimate conclusion? Death. Arise for our help. This is glorious. This is your promise. Your promise is not here. You have the down payment here. You're not redeemed yet. You're being redeemed. But endure unto the end. Oh, saint of God, What does he end with? And redeem us for thy mercy's sake. For thy mercy's sake. Who do you think he's talking about when he says for thy mercy's sake? You've got to have one that starts. We had Adam, but where did that first one end up? Ended up in the grave, didn't he?
Yes.
And every one of his sons and daughters have gone to the grave. Every one of his sons and daughters have gone to the grave. Every one of them. Every one of them. Arise for thy mercy's sake. That's Christ. Where you get mercy is Christ. Arise! First, the trump of Christ shall sound. The dead in Christ shall rise, and then those that remain shall be caught up together with him in the air. Comfort one another for thy mercy's sake, and so shall ye ever be with the Lord. So comfort one another with these words. Arise. Every trauma, David here is talking about every trauma you go through, every walk you go through, every valley you go through, you're going to come out the other end having lived out the birth, death and resurrection of Christ. Birth, death and resurrection of Christ. Birth, death and resurrection of Christ. And you are. Every time you go through a trauma, the Lord is killing a little bit more of you and killing a little bit more of you. Your ultimate victory is your ultimate failure in the first Adam, because you will be arisen in the last. You're going to be arisen from this body. The body of this death will become the body of your life in him, if you will believe.